All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for checking out the Rich CELENZA show. So, what I'm going to call this podcast is Where Does the Anger Come From? And I was watching a Netflix show. It was actually about a woman's daughter who got murdered. And then she went on MySpace actually to find the killers. I don't know, I forgot what it's called, but it was quite interesting. The mother was devastated. She also had some sons, so the brothers of the daughter, her daughter, they were all upset as well. The daughter got shot right in front of one of the brothers, one of the siblings. It's pretty shocking, and they have it on video. It's crazy. But she talks about anger and how upset, obviously, she became. And I think I can speak for, I think, anybody, or for most people in the world, they're angry a lot of times. And a lot of times we don't talk about anger and kind of where it comes from. And she said one thing that kind of blew me away. And what she talked about was, after a while, regarding her life, her being angry all the time, even besides her daughter, what happened? She was angry. She didn't know where all this anger. And basically what it came down to is she was angry with herself and kind of what I think she became and who she was. And I think a lot of times we think it's other people making us angry all the time or aggravating us. But the truth is, really deep down, the anger, I think, at least for me, is I make myself angry because I maybe never became what I wanted to become. Or I'm not maybe as smart as I wanted to be. I used to go around and say, I'm smart enough to realize how stupid I am. That sounds crazy, but when it comes to, say, schooling, I wasn't very good in school, so I would always I would be angry when I was at school. And I wasn't angry. I would take it out and say the teachers, the school sucks, or, I don't like learning these things. It's all stupid. The reality is what it stemmed from was me being mad I couldn't keep up or I couldn't do what other students were doing. But I also was smart enough to say, well, I see my weakness here, but athletics and other things, personality and all this other things, I see I'm pretty strong here. So I kind of was able to balance it out. I do think with a lot of kids maybe is they have problems in school, and then they don't have the other things. Say they're not athletic either, and then they're very shy or intimidated or scared. They get bullied, all these things. I've thought about that before where you don't have a balance a little. I was able to balance both. So where I was weak, I was strong in other areas. It kind of breaks my heart because I kind of get into that I have a program, Mastering Self-Confidence, and I want men to understand that how strong they really are. They may not realize it. They haven't developed the skill yet. That could go for physically and mentally. But the truth, too, is when it comes to academics, you just may not be that sharp at it. But that doesn't mean you can't start a business, be an entrepreneur, or do something else. I mean, not everybody has every skill. We all know that. Just because you're a great athlete doesn't always make you a scholar. And just because you're a scholar doesn't make you a great athlete. And say you don't have either one of those skills. You want to be a great gamer. You may not be great at gaming, but you're great at programming. I'm just using for an example. But back to anger, I think a lot of us out there, we don't want to acknowledge we're mad at ourselves. We're mad at, like I was kind of mentioning before with her, is the situation we ended up in. We may be angry at who we married or why we got a divorce or the situation we may have, your kids may have ended up in, how your kids turned out. Maybe the way you behave. You may even be angry because you have addiction issues and you don't want to address them. It could be alcohol, drugs, all these things, and I'm not saying I didn't have a lot of that, but something even at a young age, I think I had an obsession with winning. And I felt like if I lost, then it was degrading and it was embarrassing. And I got so crazy even in high school. I would have, if I wrestled, and I succeeded a lot, especially as I got older, I won a lot more in the sports that I was involved in than I lost, especially independent sports. It could be tennis or wrestling or even fighting or whatever I was doing, even, team sports. I did pretty well. I'm not saying I could have probably went and wrestled collegiate, I was offered some small scholarships and things. I just didn't want to lose weight. I wanted to become as big as possible. But I had this burning in me that I was always angry. And then I made my first film, Sore Losers, and I played a certain character, and I was kind of, it was a character I was playing, but it was really just me, I realized. This person had an anger issue. I wrote this character for somebody else that was, I guess, based on me. I didn't even realize it at the time when I was writing this character. And then I ended up, somebody pulled out, so I ended up playing it because everybody said, Rich, just play this character because of the chemistry will be there. But I was looking at myself saying, my God, why are you always angry? And even when I wasn't angry, I almost had a bad attitude. And I still kind of have that. I'm not going to, like, a lot of times my tone can be very sharp, and it could be very, I'm either joking around laughing, or then it's like, then it goes the other way very quickly, where I'm not argumentative all the time, but I'm just, my tone changes, let's put it that way. But I have to really become self-aware of my anger. And I think a lot of people out there, maybe you should think about it as well. Because not only does anger, I think, we have to figure out how to either control it or kind of, I don't know how to get rid of it. I will say anger, though, one more thing, it drove me. Anger drove me to get things done. And a lot of people, I think anger is just negative. Anger, like, made me lift harder, stronger. And it made me, like, failing. Instead of, like, when I fail or I get rejected and stuff, my anger kicks in and it makes me want to go harder. A lot of times. It doesn't make me weaker, if that makes sense. Yeah, I'm aggravated. But it also lights, like, that anger drives me, I guess you could say. You could see that a lot with probably, maybe it's just something internal being an athlete. But you see athletes, what drives them is that anger. Especially the elite ones, if you think about Jordan or some of the top, athletes out there. They're like, they would even come up with things in their head that they would pretend like the other teammate said something to them or did something. They didn't even do it, but that anger drives them. But the other thing I want to touch upon in this podcast is that how your anger also can be destroying so much other things in your life, especially your relationships. Again, it could be with whoever you're with, husband, wife, whatever the case may be, boyfriend, girlfriend, the relationship you have with your kids, your parents, your siblings, colleagues, whoever it is. And it's not always anger that's, how do I say it? I don't mean anger too a lot of times where you think you're screaming at each other or arguing with them. It could kind of be subtle. It's kind of, you're just like, you don't say anything. You're even cordial with people. Could be whoever. But deep down inside, you're angry with them, right? You're pissed off at them all the time. You don't like who they are, but you're almost sometimes forced to deal with them. It's hard. And then you also have the anger where you're always lashing out and just acting like a total asshole and kind of disrupting everything, kind of always making everybody on edge. I've seen this with, obviously being in an Italian household, kind of walking on pins and needles, especially with the old timers or being around men that were in the military and they're very structured, kind of that alpha male type thing where they're like always. They're always angry. Even if they're not angry, they're ready to fire off at any time if you do something wrong or say something wrong. And, it's just, again, it's not easy dealing with other people's anger as well. So you may have your own anger and then dealing with other people's too. So I just wanted to bring these things up because these are things that I kind of think about and go through. My mother says funny things like, she's like, you sound like you're in a psychiatrist's office talking to a psychiatrist. I don't mean it to be that way. But when I do my podcast, I just try to bring up things that maybe you don't think about, that maybe, that can like just kind of make you think differently about your own behavior and also maybe become a little more patient with other people's behavior. Because I think a lot of people that are angry, I don't know if they're happy or sad. I don't know. They may just be whatever they are. But I do think a lot of people are angry. And they're beating themselves up. So maybe having the patience to understand that or maybe talking it through with them. Because I think what happens with a lot of people we know that are angry, we just stay away from them. But if they are someone you love and you care about, maybe you just need to talk things through with them. And maybe they're just angry with you. I can't stand shit where people are angry with me or they get in fights and then they cancel each other out and they never talk to each other for long periods of time. I did that once when I was young with my pops. It didn't last too long. The silent treatment bullshit, I think that's so immature, amateur, whatever the hell you want to say. But I do understand if you need to get away from people and you don't want to talk to them anymore as well. But I think not out of anger again. So if you have a beef with somebody, I think discussing the beef and then saying, listen, this is where I stand, this is where you stand, you kind of make peace with it and then just kind of go your separate ways instead of getting in a huge argument or screaming at each other or just ghosting somebody and ending it that way. That's just my opinion. But the one thing I've been trying to really do throughout the last decade is deal with my anger. And I really didn't know for years why I was always so angry. And it wasn't my parents' fault. It wasn't my, the career I chose. It wasn't anybody's fault why I was angry. The reality was I was just angry with myself. I think when all is said and done, like that woman in that Netflix thing, and I maybe just was never happy with the situation I was in for some reason, even though I was always in a position that I loved being in. I loved growing up the way I grew up and everything else. I look back, I had an amazing childhood. I couldn't have asked for a better life. I'm not saying that. I was very well loved. I have so many family members that I truly believe, my aunts, uncles, cousins, friends. So it was none of that. So again, it's something internal. I'm not saying everybody out here had an amazing life or whatever, but I will say is, you just sometimes got to address the elephant in the room, that the problems a lot of times lie within yourself, not everyone else. So that's all I got for you today. Take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.